A wife, a son, a home, a mortgage.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
A regular, reliable...
Hello, she told to me.
Where have you been?
Clock in,
Get out, Stuart.
clock out line.
Where have you been for 13 months? We thought you were dead.
If only it were that simple.
I want to remember it, man. I can't.
Never do that again.
Ordinary jobs, extraordinary lives. Clocking off. New drama starts Sunday at 9 on BBC One.
Men assume that women are only impressed by a combination of brains and brawn. They're right, of course.
A Woman's Place
Murder is no business for a woman. You should be at home.
is hot on the trail.
Much obliged, madam.
Bravo, George.
I take it I've managed to spark the flames of your curiosity.
I'm positively aglow.
Mrs. Bradley.
It would be the cream in my coffee any day.
Sunday at 8 on BBC One.
You cut it a bit fine.
This is BBC One in the Midlands. Now at 6 o'clock, the BBC News with Fiona Bruce and Nick Owen.
Tony Blair fights back against a week of bad headlines for the government and says he'll persist with plans to limit jury trials despite defeat in the Lords. In court, the 12-year-old accused of murdering his baby brother. The council says stay away, but Brixton gives Tyson a hero's welcome. Terrorism returns to the streets of Spain. Car bombs explode in Madrid.
The senior doctor suspended overuse of the controversial drug some call the chemical kosh on hyperactive children. Coventry Council gets tough. The family who terrorised the neighbours are ordered out of their home.
Good evening. It's been a troubled week for the government, but Tony Blair came out fighting today, urging voters not to be deflected by daily headlines and passing frenzies. He brushed aside criticism about NHS funding and vowed to take on what he called the forces of conservatism in his efforts to modernise public services. He also shrugged off last night's defeat in the Lords, confirming he'll reintroduce plans to limit trial by jury.
Right, morning.
Trying to put the past few turbulent weeks behind him, Tony Blair chose this East London school to spell out his message that the government's long-term plans for reform of public services like education and health remained rock solid. The big picture was intact despite the recent hail of attacks.
Reform is hard. It causes dissent. It upsets vested interests, some very well-meaning. It can seem unfair even when its purpose is greater fairness in the long term. It means taking on forces of conservatism and reaction, left or right, even when they can have superficial popular appeal.
Mr. Blair hit back at his latest critics in the House of Lords, who last night defeated government plans to restrict the right to trial by jury. The bill, he said, would be reintroduced in the House of Commons. On the issue that's hurt the government most recently, the health service, he accepted that money was needed, but the government had to keep control of its spending.
There are problems, we know there are, and individual cases have happened that shouldn't have happened. The NHS needs investment. It's now halfway through the first year of the new investment coming in. But, here again, it is investment for a modernising purpose.
Most health workers welcome the government's push for modernisation, but there's scepticism about how Mr. Blair can fulfil all his promises.
A key question that the government will have to answer is whether the funding base for the NHS, which the Prime Minister has said he will increase, can be done at a time when the Chancellor is also pledging to the electorate that taxes will be cut.
The opposition believe today's speech by the Prime Minister will do nothing to end the government's run of problems.
Well, he seems to be all talk and no delivery. We've seen this week that the health service is getting worse, that crime is going up, he's spending much less on education than he promised he would do, that people's taxes are going up, and then we have a speech like this that is really all mouth.
The Prime Minister's come out fighting at this school today, but he's clearly unhappy that events of the past few weeks and last night's defeat in the House of Lords have put him on the defensive. He's tried to turn attention onto the big picture, the government's ambitious reform programme. But restoring the public's confidence in the government could take some time. Carolyn Quinn, BBC News, in East London.
A 12-year-old boy accused of the murder of his baby brother has appeared before magistrates at the youth court in Bristol. The boy, who can't be named, was remanded to secure local authority accommodation.
The baby's body was found in an upstairs bedroom of the family home on Bristol's Hartcliffe estate. The 6-month-old had suffered multiple stab wounds and was pronounced dead at hospital. In court today, his 12-year-old brother appeared before magistrates accused of murder. The boy was small with blonde hair. He was wearing green tracksuit bottoms, a blue sweatshirt and black trainers. He said yes and nodded when asked to confirm his name, age and address, and he also indicated that he understood when the murder accusation was read. The hearing lasted 20 minutes. There was no sign of his family at court today. The boy was accompanied by a social worker and left with him to a secure unit run by the local authority. For legal reasons he can't be identified, but he'll appear again in court next week. Jane O'Brien, BBC News, Bristol.
An army officer has been killed and several people injured by 2 car bombs in the Spanish capital, Madrid. Political parties have condemned the attack, which is being blamed on the Basque separatist group ETA, who called off their ceasefire 7 weeks ago.
The dream of peace is gone. No one doubts that it was ETA who carried out this attack, striking in the heart of Madrid. There were 2 bombs in less than an hour. They claimed the life of a soldier who was walking to work. His wife and son are believed to have heard the news on TV. Spaniards hoped they had seen the last of destruction like this when ETA declared its unconditional ceasefire 14 months ago. There were hopes of a Northern Ireland-style peace process, but the 2 sides met just once with little or no result. In this exclusive interview after their ceasefire announcement, ETA's senior commanders insisted they were serious about peace and claimed their truce would last. When they broke their word, calling off the ceasefire, there were silent protests across the Basque Country, though ETA tried to blame the government. Spain is now a country in mourning once again. Tonight, the Prime Minister, José María Aznar, arrived looking stricken to join a service in honour of the dead man. The timing of the killing was no coincidence. A general election has just been announced here. ETA wants to hurt the government at the polls. As the aftermath of today's attack was being cleared away, ETA's political wing said it regretted the loss of life and shared the sense of shock. But it did not condemn the killing, and for the government, that is all that counts. For people here, this is the return of a nightmare. No one doubts that ETA will strike and will kill again. The country had hardly had the chance to get used to peace. Now a new cycle of terror has begun. Orla Guerin, BBC News, Madrid.
Mike Tyson has caused chaos in South London after making a visit to Brixton. The former world heavyweight boxing champion had to take refuge in a police station after thousands of people packed the streets to see him.
Extraordinary scenes on the streets of Brixton. Mike Tyson mobbed hundreds of cheering supporters. Wherever he goes, crowds and chaos follow. Tyson has always said he wanted to visit South London to follow in the footsteps of Nelson Mandela and Muhammad Ali. But Ali's visit last year was entirely different, recognised around the world as the greatest boxer of all time and a true icon. For many, Tyson is a fallen hero, and some think he shouldn't be here at all, including Lambeth Council, who insisted this morning that he wasn't welcome. From the refuge of the local police station, however, Tyson fought back. They say they don't want me here, right? He said. These council men can't tell me nothing I don't know about my brothers.
They said they don't like him and they don't want him in yet, but why take his £1 million? If you don't like him, then don't take his money.
But he's a convicted rapist. What?
This morning, in much calmer circumstances, Tyson signed autographs for fans and was visited by another former boxing champion, Nigel Benn.
He looks good. He looks really,
and he's angry.
Well. No, he ain't angry. He's very, very relaxed. Very, very relaxed.
In what has been an extraordinary day, Tyson has also said prayers at the central London Mosque in Regent's Park. The former heavyweight champion of the world converted to Islam while serving his prison sentence for rape. Tyson left Brixton in a police van. The irony of that will not be lost on the many people who never wanted to see him here in the first place. Graham Satchell, BBC News.
The judge in the case of Harold Shipman, the Greater Manchester doctor accused of murdering 15 of his patients, has finished summing up the evidence at Preston Crown Court. The jury is expected to retire to consider its verdict next week. Dr. Shipman denies murder and forgery of a will. There's been fierce fighting on the streets of Chechnya's capital, Grozny, as the Russians battle to take control of the ruined city. Thousands of civilians are still in hiding there, trapped by sniper fire and shelling. Across the Republic, the Chechen people say they're in urgent need of medical and other supplies. Andrew Harding has travelled into Chechnya and sent this report.
Grozny is being ground to dust. Russian artillery pounds the city round the clock, more savagely now than ever before. Somewhere amidst the flames and the rubble, Russian and Chechen troops are fighting and dying for every inch of territory. For a month now, the two sides have been struggling for control of the city. The Russians say they're now making steady progress. The Chechens insist they're holding their ground. Access to the war zone is tightly restricted, but today we managed to get into Chechnya with a delegation of Russian government officials. They'd come to a town outside Grozny to discuss the daunting task of rebuilding areas now under Russian control. The officials promised to bring money and medicine to help tens of thousands of cold, desperate civilians. We're here to look after you, said the Kremlin's envoy, but few in the crowd seemed to believe him. Instead, they accused the Russian military of indiscriminate brutality.
Many of these people are refugees who've come down from the southern mountains where they say the Russian Air Force is bombing their villages every day.
New victims are being brought in all the time. This woman was carrying her baby when a rocket exploded nearby. She lost her arm, but the child survived. As we left town, the Russian guns were starting up again, aiming towards rebel bases in the mountains. Andrew Harding, BBC News, Chechnya.
Electricity bills could come down by 10% under new reforms proposed for the privatised utility companies. They include a range of measures aimed at putting consumers' interests first and establishing a link between the quality of service provided by gas, electricity, water and telecom companies and directors' pay, designed to end the controversy over fat cat salaries.
Helen Tebbett's household has just switched from British Gas to an electricity company, so she gets all her energy from one firm. She's hoping to save around £100 a year, but she's one of only 5 million to have made the move. For the vast majority of us, privatisation's brought not just choice, but bewilderment. The government says the new measures will put consumers' interests first. Regulators will have the power to impose unlimited fines for bad practice or poor performance. Companies will have to publish any link between directors' pay and customer service. The bill will change the way electricity is traded so the market's more competitive, and it'll create powerful consumer councils to investigate complaints. Anne Robinson, who heads the present Gas Consumers Council, will be in charge of the new watchdog body covering both gas and electricity.
If we're not very happy with how companies are behaving, we have the power to name and shame people, which I will do. I have to name and shame to get a better deal for customers and to get companies to change, that will happen.
If the new system works, it should put an end to accusations that directors of once public utilities are paid too much, that they had their snouts in the trough.
We think the matter of pay is a side issue. The most important thing is looking after the interests of our customers, and in terms of performance we have nothing to fear. We've reduced our prices by 30%.
The aim of the new bill is to create assertive consumers who know where to shop around to get the best deal and whose complaints count. The problem is ensuring that this rhetoric becomes reality. Nicola Carslaw, BBC News at the Gas Consumers Council call centre.
The time is nearly 6:15. In a few moments, a new safety campaign tells us to keep mobile phones out of the car. Given the boot, the game that gave generations of small boys dreams of goals and glory.
In Midlands today, a senior doctor suspended for using a controversial drug on hyperactive children. The £6 million bus station opening that's been delayed yet again. And the baby that's been named after his father's favourite football club.
More and more of us have come to rely on mobile phones, but using them while we drive can cost lives. That's the message of a new advertising campaign which aims to stop people making calls while they're in the car. Our correspondent Robert Hall is at the Transport Research Laboratory in Berkshire. Robert.
Fiona, it's a dilemma that faces millions of us every day, whether to take or make a mobile phone call whilst on the move. Well, the message from the government today is very definitely no. The adverts, the first of their kind, are intended to punch home the risks that drivers are taking.
Single vehicle hit pedestrian. Driver reported to be on a mobile.
Mobile phones, a great way to make contact with someone. That's the stark government message accompanying these pictures of an imaginary accident and targeting the UK's 24 million mobile phone users. This accident is not a reconstruction. It claimed the life of 32-year-old Carol Pattinson. The driver responsible had been on the phone.
He just ploughed into the back of her car and lots more. They were stationary on the M8 near Glasgow, and he was trying to replace his receiver onto the handset.
It's not safe. There's no two ways about it. They should not be allowed to receive anything on a mobile phone while they're driving.
Many still ignore the warnings, despite research showing that use of a mobile phone seriously affects drivers' reaction time. Work using simulators has proved the dangers still exist, even when using hands-free car kits. However, the police believe tighter legislation might make it more difficult to bring prosecutions. They agree with the government that greater awareness may be the more powerful weapon against those who won't switch off. Well, I talked about the research there. A lot of it's been carried out here at the Transport Research Laboratories in Berkshire. And waiting for me here on the test track is Andrew Parks from TRL. Andrew, we talked about reaction time in that report. What effect does using a phone have?
Most of European and American research is pretty consistent, and they're showing effects of about a 20% decrease or getting worse in terms of reaction time for people engaged in a car phone conversation.
Now, you've looked at hands-free phones as well. Surely they're safer, aren't they?
Yes, certainly a better design option than trying to hold a handset and drive at the same time. But the important feature that people must remember, it's the act of having the car phone conversation itself which is the real problem.
And people trying to use their phones, and they're very important to them, will say, well, I could lose concentration in other ways. What's so critical about using a phone?
It seems to be the fact that you're having a conversation with somebody who's not in the car with you. It's a very important difference, and the conversations people have are very different to the ones that they have with a passenger in the same car.
The government and the police are saying tougher legislation is not the answer. Why not?
Because it's so difficult to enforce, and the legislation which is in place is perfectly adequate. It's much better to take the line of increasing people's awareness of what the problems are likely to be, and also to get them to use some of the new features which are available on modern car phones, like the divert call and answer phone systems which are available already.
Andrew Parks, thank you. And the message is going out tonight, and a sobering thought is there are now more mobile phone users than there are car drivers. Fiona.
Thanks, Robert. A woman left infertile by a hospital error has failed to win enough compensation to pay for her to have a child through a surrogate mother. Margaret Briody, who's 46 years old, was awarded £80,000 in the High Court, but all of that could be spent on legal costs.
Margaret Patricia Briody, who lives near St Helens on Merseyside, arrived at the High Court hoping to receive enough damages to surrogacy treatment after winning a legal battle against St Helens and Knowlesley Health Authority. The authority had been found guilty of negligence after she'd had 2 stillborn babies during the 1970s and an emergency partial hysterectomy. Today, Mrs Justice Ebsworth awarded her £80,000 damages, including interest, but the amount was less than an out-of-court settlement offer made by the health authority, and she may yet have to pay their costs.
Well, I'm totally stunned. It's not what I expected at all. I thought there was a justice system, but now I don't think there is.
The judge ruled that because of her age and nature of her condition, the chances of successful treatment were too low, and therefore limited the award to damages for pain, suffering and counselling services. The award falls far short of what would be needed for surrogacy treatment, and court costs have yet to be decided. Miss Bridie may now take her case to the Court of Appeal. Kerry Johnston, BBC News.
Isle of Man government has agreed in principle to pay for the recovery of the Solway Harvester, the Scottish fishing boat which sank off the island last week with the loss of its 7 crew. Talks are already underway with salvage firms, although the operation would still have to be formally approved by the Manx government. Scotland has moved a step closer to getting its first national parks. The first 2 will be in the Loch Lomond and Trossachs area and in the Cairn Gorms. The bill to set them up was published this morning by the Scottish Executive, but conservationists and landowners are already raising concerns about priorities for the parks. Bullying can make life a misery for thousands of school children, but now the victims are being offered a unique refuge, their own school. The new centre in Cambridge is the first of its kind and has just 10 pupils. They've been speaking to our education correspondent, James Westhead.
Every morning, Peter Parnwell sets off for school. But unlike other 15-year-olds, he's attempted suicide, driven to despair by years of bullying.
It was every year from year 7 to year 9 when I left, every day. Beating me up, thumping me. I had, at least once a week I got a black eye. Someone broke my hand. Someone attacked me with a knife.
Now with 9 other pupils, he's attending the first school for bullied children, the Red Balloon Centre in Cambridge.
20 times.
10 times.
Yeah.
And you've got a little arrow there.
Here in a secure and supportive atmosphere, children get one-to-one tuition. Each tells a heart-rending story. The youngest, 11-year-old Juliet, was teased and isolated by fellow pupils, making her life a misery.
Mostly I felt angry at them. But I felt lonely as well because I didn't have anyone to talk to.
The pupils here have asked us not to reveal the location of their unique school. Although their tormentors are unlikely to track them down, it's a mark of how frightened they've been by their experiences.
Have they got 100 people?
Carrie Herbert, an expert on bullying, set up the school in her own home after discovering there was nowhere for children too scared to go to school. Each child's local authority pays £150 a week, although she makes no profit.
The students come in damaged. I think we need to take that damaged child and nurture it like you would in an intensive care incubator in a hospital. And we give them everything we need, we listen to them, we feed them, we nurture them, we believe in them, we trust them.
Some may doubt the wisdom of removing the victims from school, leaving the bullies unpunished. But the children themselves say it's literally saved their lives. James Westhead, BBC News in Cambridge.
Sport now, and Tim Henman continues to make good progress at the Australian Open in Melbourne. He's now through to the last 16 after beating Sebastian Grosjean in 4 sets. His next opponent will be the American Chris Woodruff. The Football Association say they'll never again allow a club to pull out of the FA Cup. This year, Manchester United were allowed to withdraw from the Cup to play in the World Club Championships in Rio. But FA Chief Executive Adam Crozier says this year was a one-off, which will never be repeated. The Wales Rugby Union captain Rob Howley has been sacked. Howley's led the side since 1998, but just an hour ago, coach Graham Henry announced he was being replaced by prop David Young.
The decision to replace Rob Howley as captain of Wales was completely unexpected and was made despite his successful record in recent matches. Howley led Wales to victory in 10 of their last 12 games. He's been widely credited with steering his country through a difficult period before Wales began enjoying consistent success under their New Zealand coach Graham Henry. And it's Henry, together with senior officials from the Welsh Rugby Union, who've clearly decided that the time was right for a change.
We need everybody playing to their individual potential, and I don't think that over the last half a dozen test matches Rob has played as well as he has done previously, and perhaps not as well as he's done before I arrived here.
The player they've chosen as a replacement for Howley is prop David Young, who toured South Africa with the British Lions in 1997. But his appointment as captain will be viewed with surprise in many quarters, given his recent injury-prone history.
Obviously, to be asked to captain your country is difficult to put into words how I feel at the moment. Obviously, proud, not only for myself but my whole family. You know, it's a great honour on us all, really.
Coach Graham Henry has made it clear that Rob Howley, the third most successful Welsh captain of all time, will still be regarded as a key member of the side for the Six Nations Championship starting next month. Paul Newman, BBC News.
It was the closest most little boys ever got to playing at Wembley, and today the final whistle was blown. The makers of Sabutio have announced they'll no longer be manufacturing the game. Flicking a little plastic figure around a felt pitch, it seems, has lost its attraction in the age of the computer game.
Like knee-length baggy shorts, standing on the terraces and an FA Cup that Manchester United had to play in, another fine football tradition has gone the way of Accrington Stanley. Sabutio may have been a poor imitation of the real thing, but for millions of youngsters over 50 years, it's been a passport to a fantasy world, played out on sitting room carpets and kitchen tables the length and breadth of the land.
My generation are extremely upset because it is a sad day, because I remember playing with Sabutio when I was a child. I think the younger generation, I don't think they'll be as upset as the older generation.
The sophistication of video games, particularly the myriad football variations which have appeared over recent years, is largely to blame for Sabutio's demise, according to the manufacturer's Hasbro. It seems youngsters today would rather press buttons than scramble around on all fours, lining up a free kick.
Very sad. I mean, things are moving on to video games, but still a classic game.
Perhaps one of the reasons why Sabutio has failed is that it hasn't moved with the times. Where, for example, is a David Ginola figure who falls over every time another player comes near him, or indeed the David Beckham figure who runs around kicking people.
In fact, Sabutio and shops like Hamley's don't cater for the top players. They have custom-made teams manufactured in Switzerland, but it will affect the baize cloth roots of the game.
Well, it's very disappointing, obviously, because I think we knew it was coming, even though they denied it at first. The problem for us is when we try and promote the game abroad, places like South America, South Africa, other countries that want to get interested, there's no equipment readily available for them.
There are enough youngsters still playing the game to ensure that it survives for a few years yet. But when equipment supplies dry up, its future looks as worrying as that of a Premiership club who've had to call in Ron Atkinson to fight relegation. Kevin Geary, BBC News.
If you stayed up into the early hours of this morning, you'll know that cloudy skies prevented most people getting a good view of the total lunar eclipse. People in Newcastle were among the few to see the Earth's shadow fall across the moon. The eclipse could be seen clearly across much of America, where the moon turned a shade of red. Now, David Brain's here with the weather now. Not that it matters so much tonight, but still cloudy skies?
Cloudy skies coming down from the north. In fact, right outside now we have clear skies and the moon is up. London had the best of the sunshine today, a top temperature of 9 degrees. And our weekend forecast is getting colder though. That cloud band moving over a large part of the United Kingdom through the night tonight. And then for the weekend forecast it is going to turn much colder with strong northerly winds and a return to those overnight frosts. Now, initially tonight we'll probably see that band of cloud drift gently down from the north. You'll see the clear skies further south. That may allow temperatures to get fairly close to freezing for a short while. But then as the cloud moves across, it'll gradually warm up. The breeze also freshening, especially in northern parts of Scotland with a strong wind here. So by tomorrow morning we're looking at these kind of figures, perhaps early frost in southern parts of Scotland, and then we're going to see that cloud move away from the south. The winds are also going to be strong, quite a strong northerly breeze or northwesterly breeze, really feeding in that cold air. So tomorrow a lot of cloud in the south, gradually moving out the way, brighter weather to follow on behind, but that brisk northerly wind will make it feel bitterly cold. With these kind of figures, 5, 6 or 7 degrees, several degrees below that in the wind, because that wind will be strong. I'll have more weather in the next half an hour. Fiona.
Thanks, David. And tonight's main news again. Tony Blair has been fighting back today after a week of bad headlines. He said he'd still persist with plans to restrict the right to trial by jury, despite a heavy defeat in the Lords. A 12-year-old boy has appeared in court in Bristol, accused of murdering his 6-month-old baby brother. Former boxing champion Mike Tyson has caused chaos in South London after attempting to go on a walkabout. It's nearly 6:30. Don't forget there'll be an update on the day's main stories later in the hour. Stay with us. In a moment, it's time to join the BBC's news teams across the United Kingdom.
Women fought for many years for the right to work.
Women no longer thought that there were any limits to what they could do.
But new research shows that it may have been a hollow victory.
You always have this feeling that someone's saying in the background, oh, you're a terrible mother, how dare you go to work?
Struggling to balance conflicting demands of career and family.
Unless you're prepared to pretend that you don't have a child,
Don't tell a child.
Panorama asks, are women being driven back to the kitchen sink? Monday at 10 on BBC One.
Hello, welcome to the start of the weekend with Midlands Today. I'm Nick Owen.
And I'm Bernadette Kearney.
The senior doctor suspended for using a drug on hyperactive children that's been nicknamed the chemical kosh.
Coventry City Council gets tough. The family who terrorised the neighbours are ordered out of their home.
The £6 million bus station that's still months away from seeing its first bus.
And into the Stadium of Life, the baby that's been named after his dad's favourite football team.
Good evening. A senior doctor has been suspended and 140 children are having their cases reviewed in North Staffordshire. The children have been diagnosed with a hyperactive illness. A helpline has been set up for worried parents. The suspension centres on the diagnosis of attention deficit hyperactivity disorder and the controversial use of the drug Ritalin.
The families of 140 children treated for hyperactivity at this clinic were contacted after an internal investigation raised questions about their doctor's methods. Today, news reports said David Foreman's use of the drug Ritalin had led to his suspension, but it's understood there was a question mark too over his diagnosis methods.
Concerns have been raised about the diagnosis and management of hyperactivity, and that's a national issue as well as a local issue. So in essence, we're asking some people to come back to the clinic so that we can review their diagnosis and their management with a second opinion.
A parents' helpline has so far taken 40 calls, and several of the children have had their treatment regime changed since the investigation began. Ritalin is a controversial drug used to treat attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, or ADHD, illness which causes patients like Ben Parks to have severe violent tantrums. 8-year-old Ben is currently having blood tests to see if his condition is caused by food allergies, but for the past 12 months he's been treated with Ritalin, taking 3 tablets a day.
I will go down any path to try and make my son's life happier, like, you know, normal for both of us really, to get rid of this tension that always seems to be in this aggression.
And it's that desire for a cure which critics say has led to the overuse of Ritalin. But here in Stoke-on-Trent, disagreements about Ritalin and attention deficit disorder have led to the suspension of a senior doctor. It's a serious blow for the main ADD support group, which sees Ritalin as a valuable treatment method, but a victory for those who say the drug is overprescribed and should be reassessed immediately. Andrew Tomlinson, BBC Midlands Today, in Stoke-on-Trent.
A woman and her teenage sons are to be evicted from their council house in Coventry because of antisocial behaviour. Coventry City Council today won legal action against the family because of a campaign of violence and intimidation from the 14 and 15-year-old boys towards other neighbours. The family can't be named for legal reasons. Well, our reporter Lindsay Doyle is at the Ernsford Grange estate in Coventry now. Lindsay, what sort of things have the 2 teenagers been doing that upset neighbours so much?
Well, the behaviour displayed by this family has been quite astonishing, Bernadette. The local residents here have been subjected to harassment, intimidation, verbal abuse and burglary. In spite of repeated warnings from the City Council, they refused to modify their behaviour. So in the end, the council took its case to the courts under the Crime and Disorderly Act.
It was the classic case of antisocial behaviour. Thefts, robberies, if anybody spoke to them, they got abuse, verbal abuse hurled at them. They found bricks through the windows, that sort of behaviour. Not the sort of thing that any of us would wish to put up with. And I'm just pleased that the judges actually heard what we've had to say and has granted this order, because now people in Ernsford Grange can sleep peacefully in their beds and move about the area without fear of abuse, without fear of harassment.
So were you inundated with
councillors? How unusual is it for a council to take legal action to evict a family?
Well, it is luckily quite unusual for this sort of action to be taken against council tenants. It's not the first time, though. There have been cases in the Midlands, but the council says most of its residents are peace-loving, law-abiding citizens.
Oh, well, Lindsay Doyle at the Ernsford Grange estate in Coventry, thanks for talking to us.
Well, now the latest development in the Isabel Peake murder inquiry. The authorities in Portugal say France has now supplied the necessary paperwork for extradition proceedings against the prime suspect. 20-year-old Sid Ahmed Rizala is wanted in connection with the Birmingham University student's murder in central France in October. It's feared proceedings could be drawn out if Rizala appeals against the extradition.
Police in Telford are questioning 2 people following the death of a baby girl. Investigation began after the 18-month-old child was admitted to the Princess Royal Hospital with serious head injuries. She was later transferred to the North Staffordshire Intensive Care Unit, where she died.
The collapse of the Transtech Group has led to the closure of a Dudley foundry with the loss of 28 jobs. Castal Limited says the loss of almost £100,000 owed to them by Transtech has tipped them into liquidation. The group, in which the former Paymaster General Geoffrey Robinson is a major shareholder, is now the subject of a government investigation.
The government's being urged by road safety campaigners in the Midlands to reduce the speed limit in rural areas to help cut the number of road deaths. The results of a major review are due out soon, but campaigners are worried that ministers may decide to leave speed limits unchanged. Well, from Herefordshire, here's our transport correspondent, Peter Plisner.
Crossing the road in Welsh Newton is a risky business. It's too small for a conventional speed limit, so drivers are free to pass through the village at up to 60 miles per hour.
Well, we've been campaigning with the parish council to try and get a speed limit for many years now without any success. People are just too frightened to use the road for anything other than driving on. It's too dangerous to walk or to cycle or to ride a horse, for example. So we'd really like to have a speed limit.
And the absence of a footpath means that some parents are forced to drive their children to the bus stop just a few hundred yards away.
The road is so narrow around here, and with the volume and speed of the traffic, it's really dangerous to walk down there, particularly on dark mornings.
And this village isn't alone. Around the region there are quite literally hundreds of places where reducing the speed limit could bring substantial safety benefits. Residents here had been hoping that the government's review of road safety, due to be published next month, would bring about blanket reductions in rural speed limits. However, it's now emerged that in most places nothing will change. Midlands road safety campaigner Paige Mitchell, who's also the author of a major report on speeding, is extremely concerned.
It's a big mistake. I mean, it's the first time in over 20 years that they've looked at the national framework. It's clear that people don't understand it and they don't respond to it, they don't obey the speed limits, and the government's got to change that situation. They've got to take a lead.
But Transport Minister Lord Whitty, seen here on a recent visit to the Midlands, will be aware that widespread reductions in speed limits won't be universally popular. As a result, it's thought his review will instead suggest more restricted reforms, which will allow local councils to oversee any reductions.
I'm quite happy to take that on with 2 provisos. One is that we are given adequate resources to do that, and secondly, and probably more importantly, that the issue of enforcement of speed limits is addressed. That is a matter which the local authority has no control over whatever at the moment. It's a police matter.
With growth of traffic in rural areas outstripping that in urban districts, in places like Welsh Newton, unless something's done, the situation can only get worse. Peter Plisner, BBC Midlands Today in Herefordshire.
Tourism officials from Merseyside have spent the last couple of days at one of Jaguar's Midlands car factories in an effort to convince some of its workforce about the advantages of moving north. Around 200 designers who've been working on the new baby Jaguar for the last few years in Coventry will relocate to Liverpool later this year when the car goes into its final production stage. But as Gary Kean reports, some people might need considerable persuasion to move.
For the moment, the baby Jag exists only on the drawing boards of the design engineers at this Coventry plant, who've been working on it for the last few years. In August, 200 of them will move to Ford's Harewood factory to transfer production from the Escort to the new Jaguar. For those staff unsure whether or not the grass is greener further north, Merseyside's image makers are putting on a charm offensive to help with any last-minute jitters they may have.
This is a big decision that certain people have got to make. They're relocating their family, their children. Some of the questions are obvious questions. Where am I going to live? Where am I going to educate my children? And obviously, what am I going to do in my spare time?
Love me do. You know I love you.
For the majority of Coventry workers, the move will be temporary, between 12 and 18 Those who do grow to love their new home will get the opportunity to stay permanently. To help them make that choice, today's exhibition tried to sell Liverpool's educational, cultural and leisure facilities.
Well, obviously we've got all the stereotypical Liverpool jokes being going round, so this session this morning has been very useful, speaking to people from Liverpool to get a good background to how things work, because it's the unknown just now.
Well, to be frank, I haven't actually convinced all of my family that it's the right thing to do yet.
Some staff have already moved north, including people with reservations which have now been overcome.
You do get some certain ideas of what Liverpool is like, and I suppose I had some of those myself because I'd never been to Liverpool before I moved up with a job as well. So very quickly you begin to realise that Liverpool's a very vibrant and a very friendly city.
Over the next 12 months, staff from Liverpool will make regular visits to Coventry, while engineers here will perhaps get their first taste of a new life on Merseyside. Undoubtedly, they'll see cultural differences both inside and outside the factory. The purpose of events like today's exhibition is to bridge that. Gary Keown, BBC Midlands Today, Coventry.
4 pupils have been suspended by a school in Stoke-on-Trent for possessing cannabis. St Joseph's School in Trent Vale says a small quantity of the drug was brought in by one boy who gave it to the other 3. The students, who are all 15, will be kept away pending discussions with parents and the police.
Private homes for the elderly in Birmingham are now being advised by the City Council not to serve fresh eggs because of the risk of food poisoning. It follows criticism that the council had issued instructions to its own homes after an outbreak of salmonella, but had not passed on the warning to the private sector.
Work has begun today to breathe new life into the Chatterley-Whitfield Colliery in a project involving English Heritage and Stoke-on-Trent City Council. The renovation of the site will cost tens of millions of pounds. Historically, the redundant colliery is regarded as the most important in the country.
The opening of Walsall's new multi-million-pound bus station has been postponed for a second time because of concerns about its structure. The station was expected to open before Christmas, but won't be ready now until the end of March at the earliest.
The new state-of-the-art bus station in the centre of Walsall, still waiting for its first bus. The prestigious project was expected to be completed over a month ago, and the latest news of further delays has dismayed the town's bus users.
It's cool, isn't it, really? Wasted money.
Let's just hurry up and get it working, because the bus stops are all over the place and everything, and it's stupid just having to walk to them, and it would be better if it's just in like one place.
The problem stems from a major structural fault that was found in the roof of the £6.5 million building last September. It appeared to have sagged up to 3 inches more than expected during construction. Independent engineering consultants were called in, and their report not only questioned the design of the structure, but recommends that more work should be done on the columns. In addition, the extent of the alterations is believed to be the subject of debate between the London-based architects and the authority which commissioned the project.
Really, as far as I'm concerned, this is just another private sector letdown, and it shouldn't have come to this. And what is even worse, we can't be certain at this stage when we'll have the thing that we all as taxpayers have paid.
The architects of the project refused to comment today on this latest setback, but on Monday, Centro and the West Midlands Passenger Transport Authority are meeting to decide how to progress. Vicky Berry, BBC Midlands Today, Walsall.
Of course, when they do open it, they'll probably open another 2 very quickly.
Probably always the way, yes. Well, the time this is exactly 18 minutes to 7, and still to come tonight.
Why, this baby had better like football, or else.
A Midland theatre company has been forced to cancel all its shows after thieves stole its van containing puppets and equipment worth thousands of pounds.
The company, called Sky in the is having to disappoint hundreds of children. One of the missing puppets is 6 feet high, and the company is appealing to the thieves to send them back.
Well, children, I'm sorry to have to tell you that our puppets have been stolen.
A workshop at Ashton-under-Hill First School near Evesham, but with most of the main cast missing.
Absolutely devastating. This is our livelihood. We've got numerous bookings this year, and we can't do any of them without our show, without our puppets.
The 6 feet high evil Ice Queen videoed shortly before the theft of the company's red Vauxhall Brava van containing 13 homemade puppets and other equipment.
It's all valuable, really. The lighting equipment has obvious monetary value, but the most valuable thing to us is the puppets, because they were months of work.
And they must be very difficult to get rid of.
You'd think so, yes. They're really of no use to anyone else.
Their touring show, Martha and the Magic Skip, has had to be cancelled following the theft from the company's Malvern studio. What do you think of people who steal puppets?
Well, they're very bad.
And what would you say to them if they're watching?
Stop pinching lots of things.
Stop you from seeing your show?
Yeah.
And what do you think of that?
Quite nasty. Bad.
Are you annoyed you can't see the show this afternoon?
Yeah.
Police say that the thieves were probably after the van and that the discovery of the puppets would come as something of a surprise. Anyone with information is asked to phone Worcester Police Control or Crime Stoppers. For the moment, the company's productions are put on hold, but workshops will continue. John Yates, BBC Midlands Today, with the reduced Sky and the Pie Puppet Theatre Company.
Now, it's a year to the week since a struggling Port Vale parted company with long-serving manager John Rudge. The decision to replace him with former player Brian Horton divided the supporters.
12 months on, and Vale are in a worse position now than they were then. And on the eve of a Midlands derby against Birmingham City, Mark Chesworth has been looking for signs of optimism at Vale Park.
For many fans, John Rudge was Port Vale. His sacking a year ago, after 15 years in charge, was to have repercussions that would dog the club for months to come. No sooner had former player Brian Horton been installed as Rudge's successor, fans loyal to the man in the famous flat cap staged a demonstration to register their disgust at his treatment. The whole sorry affair dragged on into the summer, and the club was finally ordered to compensate its former boss. A look at the First Division table today shows Vale in the bottom three, a worse position than when Rudge departed, and some fans remain unconvinced about Horton's ability to stave off relegation.
I'm one of the people that wouldn't hear a bad word said about Brian Horton as a player. He was magnificent for us at the Vale, but I think the jury's still out on his management skills.
The pressure's on to get 3 points at home to Birmingham City tomorrow.
I'll bring a few. Our supporters have not really moaned at us. You know, it's not nice being in the bottom three. We need to win games, so we need them with us, and there'll be a good atmosphere Saturday.
Striker Gareth Taylor's the latest Vale recruit. With just 2 goals in their last 6 games, he's been brought in to provide some much-needed firepower.
I tried to get Gareth when I was at Huddersfield. I've always rated him. Good target man, good in the air. He got 6 goals in 10 goals for Man City, so hope we can carry on producing them.
How likely is the nightmare scenario for you that Vale go down and Stoke come up, because they're on the rise at the moment, aren't they?
It's a possibility. My friends that watch Stoke tell me there isn't a cat in hell's chance of Stoke going up. I haven't seen them. I only see Stoke when they're lucky enough to play the Vale.
Food for thought for all Vale fans. Mark Chesworth, BBC Midlands Today.
Other football news now. Coventry City have added 2 Peruvian internationals to their Cosmopolitan squad for a combined fee of £1.5 million. Striker Israel Zuniga, the leading scorer in South America last season, and defender Walter Zevallos are due to arrive next month. Zuniga's move is subject to the granting of a work permit.
West Bromwich Albion are to call an extraordinary general meeting in an attempt to remove Tony Hale from the board of the club. Hale resigned as chairman last month, but is refusing to step down as director of the PLC.
Cricket and Warwickshire have been given international clearance to sign South African-born all-rounder Ryan Sierra. Because of family background, he can be registered as an England-qualified player. He was recommended to the club by South Africa's former national coach Bob Woolmer, who's returning to Edgbaston this year.
And that's the sport this Friday evening. Now, a husband and wife who started up a business in their back garden are now installed in a brand new factory supplying the rich and famous.
David and Paula Franklin wanted to produce high-quality handmade wall tiles to rival those from abroad. They've learnt how to do it in just 4 years and won national acclaim into the bargain.
A rare moment for reflection in the Franklins' rapid rise to success. Based in Shrewsbury, their firm's one of just 3 in the country, making tiles entirely by hand.
A lot of tiles are imported from Spain and France and Mexico, and we really believe that we could produce something of, an equal quality or even better.
They got started in their garden shed and asked their neighbour for help.
I was talking to him one day,
that I'd taken early retirement, but I'd be looking for a part-time job. And he asked me if I would be interested in helping him make some tiles.
And 4 years on, you're still here?
4 years on, I'm still here, yes.
After drying, the rough edges are removed. Then the tiles are glazed, often several times, before firing.
And this is the kiln they started with in that garden shed, making just a couple of hundred tiles a week. Things have moved on since then.
Today there are 3 giant kilns. One firing takes about 10 hours. Their weekly output, 7,500 tiles. A big leap forward from a standing start.
We didn't know how to make it, and we just had to keep trying, and we kept changing the parameters. But I knew in my heart we could do it, and you know, now we've got a tile which it's one of the best in the world.
The firm employs its own artist, and his designs have caught the eye of celebrity customers, such as Michael Caine and the singer Chris Berg.
It's nice to see it when it's up on the wall as well, behind someone's arga or, you know, in their bathroom. It's a really nice house, and it's really nice to see.
Turnover's doubled in the past 8 months. It's planned to double the workforce in the near future. Giles Latcham, BBC Midlands Today, Shrewsbury.
That's great to have good news on the business front for a change. Shafali, hi.
Well, anyone see the lunar eclipse in the small hours of this morning? Well, judging from one of the emails I got from a viewer who stayed up to watch it, especially, it was a bit of a non-event because of all the fog and mist that was around. But we got pictures of it here at Midlands Today, or rather one of our cameramen did. They were taken in Redditch between the hours of 3 and 6, which is when it all happened. From start to finish, the eclipse lasted 78 minutes, and during that time, if you could see it clearly, the moon dimmed and a total eclipse appeared a reddish-brown in colour. That was what happens when the full moon passes through the Earth's shadow. But let's see what happens when we look at tonight's chart tonight. It's going to be a clear night to begin with. The clearest skies over towards the east, and that's going to encourage mist and fog patches tonight, and also widespread ground frost. But all of that is going to disappear after about midnight as we start to see some cloud drifting in from the west. And that's coupled with some light patchy rain spreading eastwards, and then the temperatures should rise slightly during that time. But the minimum we're going for tonight is going to be Celsius. And by tomorrow morning, well, there'll still be some residues of rain and cloud to shift, most of that in the south of the region, but there's brighter weather then pushing in from the north, and that's together with just the odd shower, but it's also more a case of sunshine during the afternoon, with any showers down to a bare minimum. It's largely dry weather tomorrow. Temperatures up to 6 or 7, although taking a look at the wind speeds, they're quite gusty tomorrow, up to 20 miles per hour from the northwest, so that'll make it feel a little colder, adding a wind chill. And it's really chilly on Sunday. During the morning, we're hovering around a freezing mark, and that's going to give an early morning frost, but largely dry and sunny. Just a few wintry showers spilling into the east, and those will continue to do so during the afternoon and breezier through the day. That's the forecast. Have a good weekend.
Thanks,
good
Shafali.
pictures.
Did you see the lunar eclipse?
No, funny enough, I was asleep. Did you?
Well, it was difficult because of cloud and stuff, but in
Yeah.
the end it did clear. I just saw a glimpse of it. I was over the moon. It was fantastic.
We've heard of people naming their children after all 11 players of their favourite football team, but a couple from Shropshire have gone one better, haven't they, Nick?
The baby's father, Adrian Childs, is so obsessed with Aston Villa Football Club, he's named his son after the whole club. Aged just 12 days, meet Aston Villa Childs.
Young Aston Villa is already sporting his namesake shirt. His dad's convinced it'll be no time before he'll be on the pitch ready to sell a dummy, although he doesn't look too on the ball at the moment. But who knows, these little feet could soon be banging in the goals like Ian Taylor, or perhaps these tiny hands will be saving them like David James. Even though he's lived in Broseley near Telford all his life, Aston Villa's dad, Adrian Childs, has always supported the Birmingham club, and is so dedicated he's determined to provide them with a star player for the future.
It's perfect. See him in one of these jerseys with Childs on the back when he's a bit older, playing for Aston Villa, do me. He'd be able to kick a ball before he can walk if he's got to try and get my way.
Little Aston could hardly wait to get into the world to start his football career. His mother, Angela, ended up giving birth in an ambulance as there was no extra time to get to the hospital. Angela, a West Bromwich supporter, was a bit dubious about her partner's choice of name at first.
He didn't approach me, he told me I didn't have much choice, and I don't mind it now. I've got used to it.
Couple decided to play by the book and even wrote to Aston Villa chairman Doug Ellis asking for permission to use the name. The result was favourable, and the chairman's even sending some special gifts to the young prodigy.
First of all, this is a sleep suit, I think, isn't it?
so long since I had babies, I don't... Now, I thought we'd make some gifts to them. Very glad we've got another supporter on the way.
And Dad's so determined his son's name will not be in vain, he's even started saving a few pounds a month in a special account to pay for a coach to help him keep his goal on target. Bob Hockenall, BBC Midlands Today, Shropshire.
Thanks, Bob. Right, a look now at tonight's main stories. 140 children diagnosed with a hyperactive illness are having their cases reviewed. The senior doctor has been suspended from Abbey Hulton Clinic in North Staffordshire. A helpline has been set up and several of the children have had their treatment regime changed.
And the government's being urged by road safety campaigners in the Midlands to reduce the speed limit in rural areas to help cut the number of road deaths. Campaigners are worried that ministers may decide to leave speed limits unchanged.
So what do you think about that Aston Villa baby then?
I think he's lovely. What would your middle name have been then? Nick? Luke Town Owen.
Yeah, better than Queen of the South or something like that, maybe.
Just marginally.
Anyway, that's all from Midlands Today for this week. On Monday, we'll be visiting a new exhibition of images of Christ as a black man. The collection of paintings and sculptures by a group of African, Asian and Caribbean artists aims to challenge the view of Christ as a white European.
Also, can we just say good luck to the cast of Cinderella in Ledbury tonight, who are getting ready for the opening night of their pantomime at the Market Theatre. It's very good, I've seen it.
Should have a ball. Bye-bye, have a good weekend.
Bye.
Welcome back. The Prime Minister has insisted he will press ahead with plans to limit the right to trial by jury in England and Wales, despite last night's defeat in the Lords. Mr Blair said the measure was needed to modernise the criminal justice system and would release £100 million for frontline policing. A 12-year-old boy has appeared before a youth court in Bristol accused of murdering his 6-month-old brother. The baby was found stabbed at the family home 2 days ago. The boy, who can't be named, has been remanded to secure accommodation. The Spanish government has blamed the Basque separatist group ETA for 2 car bomb explosions in the centre of Madrid. An army officer was killed in one blast and a young girl was injured. Police said no warning was given. Mike Tyson has caused chaos in South London after making a visit to Brixton. The former world heavyweight boxing champion had to take refuge in a police station after thousands of people packed the streets to see him. A woman left infertile by a hospital error has failed to win enough compensation to pay for her to have a child through a surrogate mother. Margaret Bryady, who's 46 years old, was awarded £80,000 in the High Court, but all of that could be spent on legal costs. Michael Burke will be here at 9. Have a good weekend. Good night.
Red tape and miners. Mining's always caused danger and illness. Sick miners have been told they'll get compensation, but many didn't receive a penny before they died. Why the delay? Why the red tape? The Midlands at Westminster, 1 o'clock BBC 2 on Sunday.
Good evening to you. Our 5-day forecast is a cold one. A pool of cold air is poised to move in from the north, and it's being brought by this line of cloud you see approaching the United Kingdom as it sweeps in. And it's going to give some more rain, I think, across parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland, gradually pushing its way southwards. And behind that band of cloud, the cold air will sweep across most areas by the end of tomorrow. Certainly by the end of the weekend, everywhere would have had quite a frosty start to the day. Now then, those winds will be quite strong, especially down through the North Sea for a time, and stay from a cold direction all the way through the next 4 or 5 days, perhaps warming up a little bit in the far north of Scotland as we move through Wednesday and Thursday. Otherwise, it's a chilly story for the next 5 days. Our overnight temperatures, well, in the south where the skies remain clearest longest, we'll probably see the lowest figures. -1 or -2, but with the cloud 2 or 3 above freezing for Scotland. But then we're going to see those frosts become far more widespread over the next few nights, and certainly a cold feel to the air with those cold northerly winds lasting all the way through to the early part of next week. Now then, this band of cloud in the south will gradually move out the way through tomorrow morning to give everyone a fine day. I think there'll be a few showers around. It'll feel quite cold in that strong wind. The wind's strongest, I think, down along the North Sea coast, and here perhaps feeding in a few wintry showers later in the day. Top temperatures 6 or 7 degrees. If you are heading across the North Sea, the ferry crossings could be a bit rough with those strong winds. Check the details on CFAX page 435. And then as we move through Saturday night, another frosty night. Sunday's forecast not too bad. More cloud in the east, giving a few wintry showers. Have a great weekend. Bye for now.
This Saturday on BBC One, it's all about choices in Casualty.
At the end of the day, what is more important to you, your career or your personal life?
If things don't change, one of us is going to have to reconsider our position.
Then at 5 to 9, decisions of a different kind. As Sunburn returns for a new series.
I don't sleep with clients.
Then at 9:45, a host of questions for the dinner ladies. With Match of the Day at 10:30 this Saturday night, make your choice, BBC One.
On tonight's Parkinson, three men who are as talented as they are seductive.
Parkinson returns tonight with a brand new series.
From cinema, there's heartthrob Ray Fiennes. From the world of music, pop megastar Mick Hucknall. And from comedy, well, you don't get much sexier than Mel Smith. Join us tonight, 9:30, BBC One.
Pet Shop Boys, Missy Elliott and Eurythmics. Top of the Pops on BBC One in half an hour. First, though, a brand new series and time to swap belly dancing